Hey, Jim.
Hello.
How are you? How are things going?
Good. Just
Awesome.
in the process of moving everything over from CTM right now.
Gotcha. Fun stuff, right? How was your weekend? You have a nice Easter?
Yeah, we didn't do much. Well, we had a nice gathering on Saturday.
Okay.
Of course, distance.
Right, right. Absolutely. Well, I'd say it keeps us innovating, right, and creative.
Yeah. So did you get a haircut?
I did. I actually cut it myself.
I was starting to do that, and I chickened out. I took a chunk out, and I said, "Oh, let's just stop."
Yeah, I used to cut my hair years ago. Probably it's over 20 years now. When I played soccer down in Brazil, and so didn't have a choice but to take to do that, and had to break out those skills again.
Yeah.
little rusty, but didn't make anything crazy. So.
Yep. Looks good.
Well, thank you. We'll get started in just a minute, and then we'll see. I know everyone else has come jumping on here in just a moment here, and we'll get things going. There's Mr. Jake Ginger. Jake, how are we? There you are.
What's up?
Hey, how we doing?
It's a party. It's a Monday, another Monday of homeschooling.
Yes. Well, I'm feeding Haven applesauce while we're talking, so there you go.
Whatever works, right?
Here's my morning.
Whatever works. How you guys doing?
Doing awesome. Jim, have you met Jake yet?
I haven't met anybody yet.
Outside of this.
Virtually, right?
Right.
Good to meet you, Jim.
Nice meeting you.
So
I guess today is
Jim,
actually my first official day.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Good. Hey, there's Freddie's on here too. Hey, Freddie, how we doing?
Hey, how's it
Hey,
going?
Freddie.
Happy
Doing
Monday.
Good. Doing good. All right. Well, it's 12:30, and we have an appointment at 12:30, gentlemen. So let's get this party started. So our conversation today is around seller pricing strategies. Which imagine that, isn't that fun timing? So let's open this up to discussion to start with here. When you start hearing seller pricing strategies, what does that make you think of? Obviously pricing, but I mean, what other thoughts are going on?
How to get it sold fast for the most amount of money.
Yeah, absolutely. Jim, you were about to say something?
I was going to say right now it's getting kind of difficult to price anything because we just don't know how long it's going to be sitting out there.
Where the market's going to be.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Erica. Awesome.
Hello.
So we just opened it up to discussion around seller pricing strategies. So Erica, when you hear seller pricing strategies, what does that make you think of? What thoughts become created?
That's a good question.
We all had.
Okay, I don't feel so bad then.
Right. Well, when we're pricing in front of the market, ahead of the market, what does you know, pricing ahead of the market, what does that make you think of?
A crystal ball.
Yeah, right? A crystal ball, absolutely. What other thoughts?
Well, go ahead.
For me, it's better to price it competitively, and I think overpricing creates a lot more other challenges than underpricing it.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
if you overprice it, you're going to sell the other neighbor's house.
Yeah, isn't that a funny? Yeah, you're so right about that, right? Do we want to sell our home or the neighbors? I love that, absolutely. Jake, you're about to say something.
Well, especially in a market like today, it's important that we are the market, that we know the numbers, we know where it's headed, we know what's going on, so we know what to talk to, so that we set our sellers up for the best outcome, right? Prepare in advance.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But how many of us have heard of the tale of two markets? Jake, I know your hands there. That
Oh,
you've heard
yes.
of. So,
I just put in the chat, if y'all want to copy that and download it. This is it's a report that my team sends out monthly. We actually grab it from Megan Aller at
very good.
First American. And she dives deep into the numbers of what's going on in the market. So this is part of what we'll use to speak to the market of the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And what was your question, Patrick, before I just babble?
No, well, it was regarding the tale of two markets, right?
Yeah.
Oh, so if you were to take, so here's where I'm going with this, right? 10 years ago when we were in the recession and it was all of those fun times with crazy inventory and, you know, days on market were not 30 days. Days on market, even when it was healthy, was 120 to 180, right? So we have a lot of conversations with our sellers around pricing. So the tale of two markets, if you were, I'm holding Haven, so otherwise I'd draw this out. If you take a piece of paper in front of you and do two circles, and you have market number one, market number two. It's a great visual, right? And what you do is you take, now, if you know your local numbers, like what Jake was talking about there, you can quickly identify in market number one, which homes are selling, right? So market number one is the market that is actually selling. Market number two is the market that's testing. So instead of being inside that circle, you have all these dots all around that circle, right? That's the market's here, yet they're not in the market. So because of that, they're missing the market, right? So the question becomes to Mr. and Mrs. Seller, weeks and months, are you willing to miss the market? Or do you want to talk about market number one? Which market do you want to put your initials on, which market you want to play in? Now, when I'm saying that as an activity, what are your thoughts on that? Any drunk monkeys around that? Any hesitations going on there? Or does it kind of go, huh, well, that could work?
I think visuals are very useful when you do a chart, just a chart, and see what's been selling at what price range in that neighborhood for square footage or whatever, and you see where they want to price it, and it's way outside of that. You know, like, well, here you go. Then you're going to need another 6 months, or
Yeah. The question could be, Freddie, how many reserves do they have, right? How many reserves do they? Hi, Wendy, how are you? How many reserves do they have where they can play the game of testing the market, right? Because market number two is a test market. It's not the actual market. Another way to look at it is that if you were to do a staircase like this, right? Do a staircase to where here's our price here if we're testing, here's the market. Now, what the challenge becomes around this is that when this is our price and this is our market, we know the market doesn't stay still, right? It's constantly moving. Now, in a market like we have today, which is completely different than our market yesterday, we know that the market's going like this, right? Based on days on market, what's going on. Now, is there opportunity within that? Yes, of course, absolutely. The challenge with pricing, though, is that even when they're trying to do a price reduction, they're actually not getting in front of the market. So if the market's moving, let's say the market's moving at 5% of a decline, if they're doing a 1% incremental price increase, it takes them 5 weeks, if they stayed at the exact same price point and the market stayed the same, to catch the market. Now, here's what's interesting. The market doesn't stay the same, does it?
Mm.
So the market, because the market's not staying the same, they never catch it, which is when we start seeing those fascinations that our sellers have that says, I don't understand. Why am I not getting offers? Why did my showings slow down? What happened? Giving them a visual on this, backed by the data, which is what Jake was just talking about, becomes very, very powerful. Because we don't create the markets, right?
Yeah.
Not that I know of. If you do, then gosh, let me know, because I'm going to invest completely into the crystal ball, right? So this is the term of chasing the market. And that's a term that we had, that really originated over 10 years ago. And that was because sellers weren't catching the market. So a pricing strategy, what do you think could be a pricing strategy that would eliminate chasing?
Price below listing.
So tell me more about that, Freddie. What do you mean?
Well, I think it's better to be in a situation where you are getting multiple offers because your house is a little lower than the ones in the neighborhood, and let the market price it up again.
Uh-huh. Yeah. What are some other thoughts? That's awesome, Freddie. What are some other thoughts around that?
Well, the challenge is if we chase the market, we may never catch it. We tell a story when we have clients that want to start up high and kind of work their way through it. We'll tell the story of, so have you ever tried to chase a bowling ball down a hill?
Ooh.
Right? And if you're alongside the bowling ball or if you're a little behind it and you're working to catch up to it, if you're alongside it and you go to reach down to pick up that bowling ball, what's going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you're going to fall with it, or you're going to stumble or whatever. So in order to catch that bowling ball, where do you actually have to be?
Ahead of it.
You have to be ahead of it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Selling a house is just like rolling that bowling, especially in today's market, it's just like rolling that bowling ball down the hill. It's helping us get ahead of where the market is so we can help you take the most advantage of that opportunity versus get run over by it.
Love it. So how many of us study the market and we know what a buyer market, a neutral market, and a seller's market traditionally is? Who could share that?
6 months of inventory or below is a seller's market.
Yep, pretty darn close. Pretty close, Freddie. Now, and that could be different today. Here's where I'm going with this, right? We know that right about 0 to 4, maybe 5 months is typically seller's market. 6 months to 7 months is going to be neutralish, and then 7+ is going to be a buyer's market. Now, we haven't seen a buyer's market quite some time, right? Now, even today, if I was to say, Jake, that's a great point on the bowling ball, yet inventory is really low, isn't it? It's a seller's market. So, Jake, if it's a seller's market, then why don't we still price at X? That's a real question, isn't it?
And it's a question that shows up all the time, and this is where the data is important. So yeah, what we are seeing is that the market's low, and I'm working to get this spreadsheet, this report over, because I know you couldn't open it. So what we're seeing right now is that there's actually more homes coming on the market than coming off the market. And if there's more homes getting listed than they're selling, what starts to happen if you have more homes that start to go on the market than are coming off?
Huh. Interesting.
Right? You start to build that inventory, which means supply and demand, just simple laws of supply and demand. If we start to see a glut of supply come on the market, and you're one of thousands of homes that happen to be listed in that week, how do we make sure we stand out?
Mm-hmm.
The back on the markets too, that's another good data piece because
That's
we're seeing
right.
a lot of homes come back on the market right now.
Exactly.
Uh-huh. Absolutely. What are some of your other thoughts on around this? Because I love this. I think this is, and that's a real question, isn't it? I mean, if we're going into a listing appointment and you're interviewing, I'm interviewing you, right? And I'm the seller, I'm going to ask you that question. Well, gosh, gosh, Wendy, it's homes are selling off the market and there's like 30 different multiple offers going on. I'm going to test it. Why can't I go 20,000 over?
Yeah.
So how do we have those conversations around that, right? The bowling ball, I love that. That's a great, great analogy. That's the first time I've heard that one. So that's a good one, Jake.
I can't say
I'll
I
learn something new every
from
day,
somebody
right?
else.
Yeah. So,
All my
it
best
really-
ideas were borrowed or stolen. So
let's look at other strategies. What could be some other strategies, even going down to the listing contract, that you could do around seller pricing?
Well, you can write it in there that you'll revisit the price every couple weeks. See
Okay.
where it's at. So if the seller is adamant about overpricing it, then you're like, okay, well, without even discussing it, we're going to lower it every couple weeks to kind of catch up the market, I guess. That's one idea to do it in the listing contract.
Absolutely. So how many of us have done that before? Awesome. Erica, you've done it before. Wendy, you've done it. Jake, you've done it. Hey, Rhonda, how are you?
I just
You've
got out
done
of
it
the
as well? Awesome. So now here's what we used to do. And now granted, this was an inventory conversation, right? Maybe not days on market. It tied together, but what we would say would be something along the lines of property X has had 20 or less showings in the first 2 weeks on the market. We will drop the price by X, right? Here was the key thing, and this was a massive aha for me. One, because it burned, and typically that's how we learn sometimes, right? Things don't always go as planned. So I had that written down in a listing contract, but I didn't have the seller initial or sign it right next to that. So what happened when I went after 2 weeks and said, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we've had 22 showings and no offers. We need to reduce the price by X. Here's where we had this in the contract. Oops, I missed that. Oh, really? Well, our home is getting a lot of activity, so we must be priced aggressively. Let's give it another week. Now I had to backtrack, right? So from that point forward, I always had an initial or a signature right next to that clause in the contract. Because then I could go back to it and say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, do you remember when we talked about this? And you agreed to this, correct? Right? Because this is your initials. Yes, that's correct. Awesome. So do we do a 1%, 3%, or 5% price reduction? Do you want to be ahead of the market or do you want to continue to chase? Because our job isn't creating the market, it's analyzing it, right? And then being able to share that with both buyers and sellers. So what are your thoughts around that?
I guess mine's more the question, as in how would we handle that right now when we're not even having showings?
Great question. So that may be, and anyone chime in on this as well, right? Now we're talking about days on market and emotion. Is there an emotional stress that's out there right now?
Definitely.
Yeah, there is.
Yep.
I got one eye on here and I'm watching a 1-year-old over here walk around in circles, right? Like there's a lot of stuff going on. So really when we're looking at time, so Mr. and Mr. Seller, how much do you value your time, right? One of the reasons why Open Door was successful when they were running and different buyer programs were successful is convenience. So what can I do that can create convenience for you? And we know that in Denver, if a home's on the market for longer than, well, what used to be longer than a day, but now it's what, longer than 22 days, 25 days? what does the buyer think? There's something wrong. They really do. They think there's something wrong with the home. If it's 30 days or 60 days, gosh, there must be something really wrong. Or the seller must be really greedy, right? That's the voices that start to go on in their heads. So if we can share that with the sellers even now, is saying, okay, it may not be showings, but it could be emotional stress on the buyer. Do you want to be in front of the buyers of today's market that are ready to go, ready, able to buy? Or do you want to take your chance with tomorrow's market that I cannot control? So at the end of the day, which one's going to be more important to you, Mr. Seller?
The price I get for my home.
Right. So Wendy, if we price your home today at X and we're priced in front of the market and you stand a good chance of getting multiple offers, even in this crazy world that we're living in, would you rather do that? Or would you rather have extended time on the market, which a lot of times supply and demand, right? Price follows demand. So gosh, Wendy, the last thing I want you to have to do is take a 5, 10, maybe even $25,000 hit by waiting. Which one do you want to do?
I guess I have a seller that doesn't want to do this virtual tour or any kind of filming other than old pictures, because he's afraid that having the house so clearly posted on the market with the marketing of virtual tours, he is worried about break-ins because he is in a remote area. He wants to play it. He says, I've got property here. I know what I've got, and I'm going to keep the market up where I'm going to get the most out of my property. I'm not going to succumb to the pressure of a buyer saying, my house has only been on the market. Or my buyer's had this house. Buyer is saying, hey, the seller's got to be eager because it's been 30 days. He's going to be wanting to move it.
Is he in a situation where he has to sell, Wendy?
Not really. No, he builds and sells.
So he's got the luxury of waiting.
Yes.
There you go. And that's why it's dialogue. However, for those who do have to sell in today's market, it's a whole different conversation. So I guess the question goes back to the two circles. Is he in the, if I can get this price, I'll sell my house.
Mm-hmm.
And if not, then no big deal.
That's correct. Yeah.
Right. He's just testing out the market for now. So well,
he doesn't want to lose out. Sorry to interrupt you, but he doesn't want to lose out on the lower interest rate of the buyer. He thinks that's, a big motivation for a buyer. They want to jump. But at the other hand, the seller's playing, hey, I'm going to wait because the interest rates are low and somebody's going to come out here and pay me this price for the house that I want. So
the other thing that we've been doing, especially in today's market, since we're not doing physical showings, is we can track all the web traffic that we're creating. So we can show what kind of hits they're getting. We can show what type of web traffic they're getting. We can show how many people and how many eyeballs are seeing the house. And basically say, look, if we've got this many people looking at your property and nobody's made a move on it or even asked for you to walk through it with them,
fair enough.
Then it's either one of two things. We're overpriced or they don't have interest.
Yeah.
Which at the end of the day, all comes back to the same thing, which is price.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So that's how we've been utilizing the technology of today to support that.
Good point.
And he agrees.
So I want to share this with you here is we have 10 minutes left. And there are, Shift was written in 2009. So there's key elements to this that are foundational for our businesses. Now, how do we take what we learned in 2009 or here in this book, right? And how do we implement it into today's market? Where there's the showings, right? Is we've had conversations, Erica, we had a great conversation around inspections today. So there's ways of doing this. There's also 10 or 7 maxims for pricing in a shifting market. And the first one is going to be a student of the market. So know your numbers. So Jake, you were talking about that. Do we have someone like Megan Aller or a different title rep that we could reach out to and say, hey, gosh, I would love to have weekly stats to know exactly what's going on in the market for my sellers.
Yep.
Now we're able to interpret the market, or go on to our even better, go on to our Facebook page, our private Facebook page, and pull the daily count that we have. How many listed, how many went under contract, how many closed. That can be a very valuable conversation, because if we track that over, let's say 7 days, we can see if the market's flexing, right? Or
And I
call it
use
2
that.
weeks.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I use that.
Yeah,
Even
that's a
before
great
we
one.
get on the market, they're trying to find the time of when they should flip the switch, so to speak, and let's say,
Yeah.
let's go for it. Using that is very helpful.
Absolutely. So how can we leverage through those pieces? Saves us time. And also we know that who asks the questions controls the conversation, right? So by doing that is, hey, Mr. Mrs. Seller, what do you think? What are you feeling? Here's the numbers. When I show you these numbers, what does it instinctively make you feel, right? They could say, get it on the market now. Or they could say, we need to withdraw it. Or they could say, we need to price it effectively or do a big price drop. What do you think is better? 3, 5, or 10%? It's all based on motivation. So the second one, that was the first one, be the student of the market. The second was focus your main comps on the actives. The pendings and solds may already be out of date. So if we're focusing on pendings that happened 3 weeks ago, we know the market completely changed, didn't it? Like overnight, just went like that.
Mhm.
So it's the actives today. What's going on in that type of movement? Number 3, be a student of property. Preview them. So even if we're online, you can still do this. So preview them so that you understand what is selling and why. So if you're with KW, you can use Command, which can go directly into neighborhoods and pull different price changes, all those good pieces that you can share automatically. Coolest thing is live data. So if someone makes a price decrease or whatever that looks, then they're able to see that 24 hours later, if that. I think, isn't that right, Jake? Or am I incorrect on that? It's about 24
Yeah, I believe
hours.
it's within 24 hours.
No.
So
Cool. Number
the other thing
4.
we've been doing too, just to help out with that, when you look at actives under contracts and solds, is we'll even pull the under contracts, and people say, well, these are the ones that are under contract. Well, the under contracts tell a story. So if you've got your under contracts and they're all going under contract about the same price as what most of the listings are, go pull the history, because what you'll see is there's a couple of them that were in there that somebody priced $30,000 or $40,000 above, and then they reduced, and then they reduced, and they went under contract when they hit that threshold. So even the under contracts will tell you the story of where the threshold is and where the activity is at. So it allows you to carry that story and support your story.
Well, the coolest thing about it's based around the numbers.
It's all numbers.
You cannot argue with the numbers, no matter what, right?
And the reason we go there is because the data takes away the emotion of the conversation, and it keeps us focused on what the data, the logic is telling us.
I love that you just said that, because the focus number 4 here on the 7 maxims for pricing in a shifted market is to keep your presentation as current as possible. Let your ongoing research do the talking. So there's a common theme with this, isn't it? It's the great thing about this, and the reason I'm smiling, it takes all the emotion out. The emotion now is replaced by the big why and the motivation, not the emotion of the market. Number 5, pre-qual for motivation. Sellers who need to sell and need to sell most sell often, right? Even in today's market, no matter what's going on, if they're highly motivated, where there's a will, there is a way, I promise you. It's flipping over that rock. And if they're not highly motivated, it's just reviewing it, And part of this could be that we review the reason why they went on the market. So, Mr. Seller, I know that our goal for selling your home within this time frame was for X. Are you okay putting your goal, not my goal, you okay putting your goal on hold? What is that going to do if we stall for 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, right? How is that going to impact your family? How is that going to impact your move? What does that look like now? And oh, by the way, what's going on in 6 months from now? Presidential election, right?
Oh.
What happens during election years?
Things don't change. They
yeah,
go down.
or they start to flex, right, Wendy? Like they
Yeah.
don't change, or all of a sudden, which cabinet's coming in? How does that respond with interest rates? So right now is a massively important time to get on the market versus not, depending on motivation. It all has to go back to that. But the more I can educate my seller, the more we can we can review that motivation and then price ahead of the market so we're not chasing. So that actually is number 6, is pricing ahead of the market, not chasing. It's funny how that one works, huh? And then number 7 is always secure price reductions in advance, like we were talking about with the contracts. So to avoid falling behind the market, it has to be always about the seller and always about them, right? Otherwise, we have commission breath, and in a market that shifts overnight, they can smell commission breath from 5 million miles away.
Yeah.
So avoid that, right? All right, we got a couple minutes left. Let's talk about some ahas and some takeaways. So we got 3 minutes left.
I wanted to pick, Patrick, yours and Jake's brain just real quickly. Is there a strategy you guys use to get what the house actually went under contract for? Like I always like, if something went under contract last week, close to my seller's house, how do you get the agent to give you a good, because it could have been listed at 400 and gone under contract at 350.
Right.
So I usually go, hey, when are you closing? And also, can you let me know if it went above asking price, or, but I want to hear from the master.
Different question. So
Okay.
the key to all this conversation is to shut up, because they'll talk
Okay.
and they'll fill the void. However, you also have to ask the right question. So what I'll ask is, I'll say something like this. Well, so Freddie, can you tell me a little bit about that contract?
Oh.
What do
Say
you
that again.
mean?
What was it?
What do you mean?
Uh-huh.
Closing day, time frames, things like that, just so I know when it's going to hit. And then you shut up. And
Well,
they'll
did
get
you
talking.
close to what?
It's all about building rapport through that whole conversation. And somewhere in the process, you'll build enough rapport, or they'll flat out say, well, you know, I know I'm not supposed to tell you, it went out, it came in just under list.
Mhm.
They won't give you a number. However, it'll give you enough guidance to know. Here's the
Right.
truth though, if they're way overpriced, it's rare that somebody's going to come in 50 grand below and make an offer. Unless
Yeah.
it's $1 million property. Right. No, typically people aren't going to come in and make a 10% lower offer. So again, we also know that somewhere in that neighborhood, the way I tell the stories, it's like fishing. If my kids love to fish, I like to read a book. So I watch them fish. However, when we go up backpacking or whatever, and we see another angler coming down from the rivers, what do my kids always ask the guy?
What's biting?
What's biting? So what's biting? What are they biting on? And
Uh-huh. Where?
Where, right? Those are the questions, common questions we all want to know. What we know with under contracts is it tells us where the fish are. It tells us where the buyers are. And our job now is to take and interpret that data to figure out the rest of it.
Patrick, I have a question that might be a little bit off track here, but just real quick. Is there any reason why, as a broker, that I cannot go and take a preview of a home instead showing the home with my phone or my camera for a buyer?
I see Jake clicking on here.
The main reason is because the governor said that you can't, and they'll put you in jail for a year.
But,
And
well,
$1,000
fine, you're
fine.
$1,000, right? But we are the professional, right? We're not
Doesn't matter.
showing the home.
Anything
Doesn't-
that we
It's
do,
showing.
anything that we do that requires us to enter somebody else's property, or for them potentially to leave or be disturbed or be exposed because of us, puts them at risk. And that's what the governor's attempting to avoid. The fact that we even have the ability to transact right now has been the big fight.
Yeah.
So if we go do things along those lines and push our limits with it, I know others may be doing it. However, if we choose to go down that path, as quickly as we fought, as hard as we fought to get the opportunity, it could be taken from us. I've got friends right now in
But it's
Michigan,
people
in New York,
contact.
and
It's-
they're completely shut down.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But it's
So
not,
question,
sorry,
Go ahead.
it's
ahead,
not people person-to-person contact though.
Even if
And
it's a vacant
further-
property, even if it's land,
Yeah.
they've come
So-
out and said we can't.
Yeah, I found out about land myself. Yeah.
So
And-
here's
which is
my-
crazy, and yet that's their interpretation of the order.
so
Okay.
here's my question. What can we do? Right? What can we do? So we can do inspections, we can do appraisals, we can do closings, right? Unless I'm missing anything on Jake, am I missing anything on this? Okay, so then here's a big question for you. And in fact, it's something that came up in a call earlier today. How many of us are advising our sellers to do pre-home inspections?
Well, wasn't that something Damien Cox did us on in his recording on Friday or Thursday that said the buyer can have a buyer inspection now plus
Mhm.
an inspection?
Right. So if you have
Exactly.
two inspections, what, and just, I'm putting this out there, what would prevent you from meeting the inspector at the house to do an inspection?
You're allowed to do that though.
Exactly. It's all within guide.
So a
Okay.
lot of this is how, it's not what we can't do, it's what we can do and how can we do it. So for example, if I was listing a home, one of the first things I would talk about is a pre-inspection with the sellers, right? To be able to have that online and ready to go. And the second thing I would talk about is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'm going to be meeting the inspector out there to do the inspection. I may have a video camera on me. I may not. But I'm there for the inspection, right? So in the event that a complaint was filed or a neighbor was to call or anything like that, now we know the inspector's truck is in the driveway, right? And you're doing an inspection.
And I would just make sure that you get the seller's permission before you video record it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Well, always, right? Like make sure this is where we are in complete alignment with our clients. So if it's have those approvals, all those pieces, and if we're able to do an inspection, how can you leverage the inspection?
Patrick, I thought we couldn't meet the inspector. I thought I got that somewhere as far as the restrictions at this point.
I'm not sure.
We're supposed to stay at home as much as we can. So
Right.
where we've got some wiggle room in what Damien's put in place is the inspection, the word inspection. What he's done is he said, okay, so I have two inspections. One's an inspection within 48 hours of the client, and the other one would be an inspection by the home inspector themselves.
Mhm.
So that way,
Right.
you get the client in the house before you pay the money for a home inspection, after it's under contract. And then you extend out your earnest money dates and things like that so that your client's not putting earnest money out before they walk in that house.
But Damien wants you to solidify the contract by saying to the buyer, you must present your earnest money before any inspection.
So what is presenting an earnest money? What's that mean?
Okay, get a receipt from your title company or,
No, that's actually depositing.
Presenting.
Presenting, in old school days, that's where you get a copy of the check and you send it with your contract.
oh yeah, no, but if
That's
the,
presenting. So as far as getting it to the title company and doing the wire, what I'm saying, I know what Damien's saying. However, once you have an agreed upon contract with a copy of an earnest money check that can be, that they're going to wire at some point, then you're set. And then what we've been doing is just pushing out our wire date for earnest money 48 hours or 24 hours after our client's inspection. So they can go through and do the inspection. They're moving forward in good faith, and we're shortening that term so it's only 48 hours so the property doesn't get tied up. What would piss me off if I'm a seller, excuse the French, however, if I'm a seller, what would anger me is if I've got a 7-day buyer inspection period and then you cancel. Right.
Mhm.
'Cause now I've had my property off the market for 7 days. I've started to do my own research and my own looking. So if we can get in there quick, I think it'll solve a lot of those challenges that we have.
Does that answer your question, Wendy? Or
not really, I'm confused. Because we can still have 2 inspections,
Correct.
one being the buyer inspection, and then one, the inspector's inspection,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
So you
Right.
want to have the buyer have their inspection within the first 48 hours of
Correct.
going under contract, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And the reason
All
we do that is because I don't want them to have to pay for an inspection. If
Oh, definitely.
they walk in and the house smells like cat pee,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
right?
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I'm on the same page then. That's fine.
and what we started doing is having a lot of our sellers actually do pre-inspections with sewer scopes if it's an older house and radon. So everything's covered. And that way, when the buyer does their 48 hours to walk in and do the inspection, they can choose to purchase the existing report from the inspector. And that way it saves our seller the cost of doing that report. However, because it's got everything in it, now the seller's aware of everything that needs to be done. They can already start doing the repairs. Plus the buyer has the confidence and we can move forward without any of those issues.
Mhm.
And the only reason we did that was because unfortunately the first order that came out 6 days ago was you can't even do an inspection. So
Right.
we were doing that in preparation for that order.
Right.
Any
So
other
Jake-
questions? Yes.
I have a
absolutely.
question for Jake. So when you say that the buyer has the opportunity to buy the inspection or pay for the inspection, how are you handling that if it's a pre-inspection?
So even though it's a pre-inspection, it's a total inspection, top to bottom. It's not your typical, it's a $600 inspection, including sewer scope and radon. We've got a deal worked out with the inspector that they won't charge the seller until close for that inspection. So that way the seller doesn't have to pay for it up front. And then we let him know that him or her, in our case, it's a him, know that we're going to actually ask the buyer to purchase the inspection. And if they do, great. If they choose to have their own inspector, great. However, what we're finding right now, because it's such a complete inspection and it's done by a well-known company in town, it's done by the company that we do a lot of work with in South Metro, by the way. Because it's a common company that most people know and know the quality, we don't have any issues with it. Most buyers are buying those inspections.
I like that strategy. That's good.
It's all on convenience, right? Like that's why some of these other companies were successful, is it's convenience. So how can we be convenient like that? Like there's strategies around that, right? Any other questions or ahas, comments? I know we went a few minutes over here, which I thought was very needed. So thank you for everyone hanging on the call here.
I do have a question. It's about marketing. Houses with flyers in front of them. It's enticing to get people out and look and picking them up. Are people still doing this? Because are we allowed to have flyers in front of a house?
I'll tell you this, we don't have flyers at all. We haven't done flyers
No.
for years.
Well, I'm old school, all right?
And
Okay.
the reason is because you can't track where the flyer goes.
Right.
So we set up other ways to be able to track that data and that information. Here's the flip side though, even today, I mean, okay, this isn't recorded, right, Patrick?
Oh, we're recording.
Oh man, I can't, okay, I'll say it anyway. I had to go out to pick up something from the store last night. I took the long way. Let's just put it that way.
Mhm.
And I got in my car. It's a BMW. It's fun. It's nice. And even though the store is a half mile down the street, I might have got on the highway, might have punched it, might have got up to 100 miles an hour because no one else is on the highway, and then took the long way back.
Brilliant.
I say it because yes, it was fun. Number one. Number two, though, is there's nobody out grabbing flyers from boxes right now. There just aren't. So save the money on the flyers. And what I would do is I would use that same money in online advertising, through Connect, through all sorts of stuff. If you haven't done Facebook ads through Connect, by the way, they just announced today that there's an offer where you spend for the first 75 bucks you spend, they give you 25 bucks back. So it's only $50. And most folks who are doing a $75 ad spend and following what the processes that we teach are picking up anywhere from 60 to 70 leads out of that.
That's like just over $1 a lead, which is incredible.
So that's where we're finding a lot more success than versus the flyers right now, because just like the rest of us, I've never spent so much time on Facebook because I'm home.
Right.
And so it's there. And by the way, we're finding the same thing. My team's average lead on Facebook right now, since we started doing it ourselves versus using Boomtown, has dropped to about 83 cents a lead.
Wow. Well, and here's an idea, guys, right? If we're looking at this and saying, okay, what about flyers? You know, what do we really know? We know that the flyers that get pulled are not typically pulled by prospective buyers, just period. You know, 75% are by neighbors or by vendors or by something like that that says, hey, check this out, right? So how else can we get in front of the neighbors? If 75% of our flyers that, let's say there's 100 flyers and 75 go missing, kids, right? Kids as well are notorious for that. So if we know that, then how else can we get in front of the neighbors? So it's not what can't I do, it's how can I do. So, you know, and that's really an opportunity that could start even by reaching out to our seller, which we need to be doing touches with anyways. You know, Mr. Seller, you know, one of the things that we know in this crazy market is everyone's home, which means they're not going to be stopping by and grabbing flyers. So a quick question for you. What are your top 10 reasons for purchasing this home in the first place and the neighborhood, right? So we go through that chain. Awesome. How many neighbors do you have around you that you have your contact information for? A lot of, whether it's next door, right? Or there's different opportunities, ways of getting that contact information. If we can get that, we just took that entire process out. Or maybe you put one flyer up, or someone puts a flyer that is a secure flyer. It's not, we used to do that, have a QR code on there, and you would have a flyer that was a plastic flyer, right? That was a permanent flyer. So if I had to change the price or whatever, then we would do that. But the reality was, I was tired personally. I was tired of having to constantly, it wasn't the cost of the flyers, it was the time of going around and having to put flyers back in flyer boxes only for the neighborhood kids to grab them. So we called them floorboard flyers is what we called them.
Yep.
In the country, it still works.
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Oh,
You're
yeah.
very right. Yeah, it's just,
Different story.
the question is, how do we do it, right? Like, it's just coming up with different solutions on how.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments, questions, concerns, anything like that?
What are you taking away from today? I nailed a couple great notes right now.
I just got a question on the Facebook marketing since it's day one for me.
Uh-huh.
Do you have any information you can send me on that, on how to?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what? Text Amber or connect with Amber and she can send you all the video links for it.
Okay.
The most recent stuff. That'll help you walk through, get everything set up, get it set up properly so that the leads are out properly. That's the biggest key, is making sure you take the time on the back end to set it all up right before you start to implement that.
Cool. And then Erica, we can get that ready for you as well. Awesome. That was a great one, Jim. Other ahas, takeaways from today.
I love the bowling ball analogy. Just
That was good.
ahead of the market there instead of chasing it. It's just not, it's so much easier and less frustrating. And then you can deal with, your biggest headache might be multiple offers.
Uh-huh. Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Patrick.
Yeah.
I had to get a little bit late. I had a drive-by closing, so I missed the bowling ball analogy, but I've heard it brought up a couple of times. So this is going to be recorded so I can jump on there and check it out.
Exactly. Yep.
Thank you.
Except for that part where I said I speeded.
Yeah.
I heard
I got to
that.
delete that out. I got to figure out how am I going to get that piece deleted out. Jake Ginger, everyone. So,
Always here to bum in and mess something up.
awesome. So, all right. So we got the bowling ball. Awesome. What's another aha?
The pre-inspection, just the clarification on how to handle that. That was huge for me.
Awesome.
I'm going to
Eric.
do that. Yeah.
It's
Good.
really, and our sellers love it, by the way, because they realize we're coming in at this. We're not thinking about how do I get a listing. We're thinking about how do I help them sell their house.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Can you shoot that information over, or can we ask Amber for that? The company you use?
Yeah, which company is that, Patrick? That's the one. The one that we have in the office is,
Rob Hall and McClish.
yeah, they're awesome.
McClish is, and I'll shoot that to you, Erica.
Yeah, please do. I haven't used them, so.
Absolutely. And Freddie, if you'd like as well, I'll get that over to you.
Yeah,
Thank
send
you.
that to me too, if you don't mind.
Everyone, yeah, we'll get everyone on there.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Let me.
I'm gonna post one more link before you close this out, and grab this link and go. So here's the other thing. Heaven forbid we get to a point where photographers don't feel comfortable going in. My team just bought 2 of these cameras. They're $80. As crazy as this sounds, it gives you a fairly decent virtual tour similar to Matterport. And literally all we're doing is popping the camera in the mail to the client. It hooks on to the back of their phone. They can go through and do their own personal virtual tour, just like you would get from a Matterport style. We send it to our photographer. They seam it all together and kind of make it all pretty. And yet it costs us $80 for the camera. And then we drop it in the mail. They do their thing. They mail it back to us. So we send it out with a return envelope. And the reason why we went this route is because heaven forbid the camera gets damaged or it doesn't come back, it's $80. So
Right.
there's a lot more
Awesome.
expensive options out there. However, this was an inexpensive one that we found works really well.
Yeah, I just did Virtuance Matterport, $350 for my.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Awesome.
that's a great tip, Jake. Awesome. Awesome, my friend.
So it's my invitation on this whole conversation isn't necessarily how do we price ahead of the market. It's how do we stay ahead of whatever could happen.
Right. Yeah.
I would love to say that May 1st I'm released and I can go work from somewhere else. However, nobody knows.
Mhm.
Nobody knows. And tomorrow things could change dramatically. So we just got to be prepared for whatever comes our way so that we can continue to take care of our clients.
Jake,
Well,
are
and-
you able, sorry.
No, go for it, Wendy.
Jake, are you able to send out what that camera is?
Yep, I just put it in the chat.
Oh, you did. Okay, thank you.
It's called AstroZoom or Astroom.
So while we're wrapping up, I have one request because this right now, everything that we're going through, every opportunity, every challenge, call it what it is, right? This is when the importance of community shows up more than ever before. So, and with community, I mean, not just what's going on in our neighborhoods, right? What I'm talking about is the family we've built. So we have an opportunity to really increase the attendance on these calls, to increase the attendance on those, so go on Facebook, on our Facebook page, let other agents know, why did you jump on this call today? What was important about it? What did you learn? Because there's something that they could take away from this as well, that they could use in their business. And gosh, maybe it could even save a listing. And
Right.
for those who are not part of us yet, invite other agents that are in your brokerage to this, because they're not getting this. And this is so important right now. Whether KW, non-KW, it doesn't matter. We have to lock arms and unite. And this is how we get through these times where there's a lot of uncertainty. Because otherwise we sit in our office and we don't have the community and we don't have someone reaching out to us. And what happens? Fear sets in, right? We spend too much time watching the news. That's what happens. So instead, let's focus in on how we can help each other out. And that would be my number one request, is to reach out to those who are your friends, whether they're KW or not KW, and invite them to these calls. Because I love having all the different conversations going on. So thank each of you. I appreciate you for taking the time today and for going over. I really do. So I trust it was valuable.
Thank
Thanks,
you for
Mom.
being here.
Awesome.
It works.
Yes, it does. All right, gang. Hey, have an awesome day. And Amber will be reaching out to you here shortly. And Jake, thank you for jumping on the call, my friend. I appreciate the nuggets.
Always. Hey, if you didn't grab that camera, it's also in the South Metro chat on Facebook. You can find it there as well.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Fantastic. All
Thank
right.
you so
We'll
much.
see you guys. You're
Bye.
welcome.